It's been a little while since I've given you an update, but this video is going to be my very late August wrap-up. So I'm going to go through what I read, what I rated them, and just tell you a little bit about them. So the first thing I read in August was The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett, which is the first book in the Discworld series. It's a very well-known high fantasy, nonsense fantasy series. I did read book 9 a couple of months ago, Eric, which I really enjoyed. Gave that 4 stars. Colour of Magic was 3 stars for me. There was a lot to wrap your head around, and it was a bit difficult at times to wrap your head around all of this information. But I am going to continue on with the series, probably up until I reach Eric again, and then I'll be almost a quarter of the way through the series and make a decision on whether I keep reading. Then, a very controversial one. I DNF'd All's Well by Mona Awed. Now, I learned of this book through Books and Lala on YouTube, and she loved it, and we have kind of similar horror, thriller reading tastes, so I was really looking forward to it. And then I ended up getting really bored. So when I went back and rewatched the live show that the Literally Dead Book Club did for it, I realised she compared it to Catherine House, which is another book I also DNF'd. So I'm not surprised. So I then went on to read Five Survive by Holly Jackson. And if any of you have been over on my blog for a while, you know I absolutely adored the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So it wasn't a surprise I picked up Five Survive, and it got 5 stars from me. Like, it had all the amazing elements that I loved about A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, especially the last book in that trilogy. Highly recommend, please go read. Another slightly controversial one, I won't say it's a hard DNF, but I put it down for now. Whether I go back to it or not is another question, but that was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Now, I read Book Lovers, Beach Read, and adored it. It was amazing, 5 stars, I loved it. People We Meet on Vacation, I got 35% of the way in, and I was bored. Like, there wasn't much happening. The kind of flashback narrative of being in the past with Poppy and Alex and then in the present with Poppy and Alex really wasn't working for me. I thought it might have been because I'm not the biggest contemporary romance reader, so I put it down for now, and potentially this month or next month I might pick it back up again when I'm in the mood for it, but it's a DNF for now. Then I continued 2 series, so I finally read Until the Last of Me by Sylvain Neuvel, which is the second book in the Take Them to the Stars trilogy. I do have for the first time again through NetGalley, so hopefully I'll finish that series this year. Book 1 was a 5 stars. I loved the historical aspect of it, the technology aspect. It really hit all the same notes as the Themis Files. The second book really suffered from middle book syndrome. Like, I genuinely felt the 150 or so pages that were relevant and that progressed the plot line could have been split in half and added on to the end of the first book and the beginning of the third book, and it could have been made a duology. But I'm still looking forward to the last book. It's obviously not going to be the action-packed ride that was the Themis Files. It started off high, it's gone down, and I'm 50-50 about the last book about whether it's going to go down again or whether it will go back up and meet the same heights as the first book. But I am interested to see more from Sylvain Neuvel in the future. And then I finally finished Obsidian Butterfly by Laurel K. Hamilton. It's the 9th book in the Anita Blake series. I've been struggling to read Obsidian Butterfly for a while because it centres around Anita and Edward, and it doesn't feature really any of the characters that I like. Anita is really annoying to follow. Edward is interesting but very one-dimensional. And we don't have any Jean-Claude, so apart from one teen Tennessee. So yeah, I was really disappointed with that. I'm majorly behind in the series read along I'm doing on Discord. We're meant to be starting Skin Trade this month, which is book 17. If I start the next book this month, that would be Narcissus in Chains, which is book 10. So I'm 7 books behind. But I can read these in one sitting if I'm invested in them. So I'm hoping that will change. Then I read the entire trilogy by Rhianna Burwell, so Done Right, Taught Right, Effed Right. Short, smutty novellas, absolutely adored them. All featured female-led romances, so instead of it being like the submissive female, dominant male, it's a complete reversal, and I loved it, especially book 2. Joey is near and dear to my heart. And then I actually continued my Stephen King read-through by going back and reading Carrie, because I was going to do them in publication order, but I happened to get my hands on a copy of Salem's Lot before I got a copy of Carrie, even though I did read Carrie years ago. I haven't been given ratings, so Until the Last of Me was 3.5, Obsidian Butterfly was 3.75, all of Rhianna Burwell's books were 5 stars, and then Carrie ended up being 3.75. It was good. I really liked certain aspects of the book more than I liked certain aspects of the movie, especially the foreshadowing elements. Really good. And then I am working with an author, B.L. Wild, who I'm part of their art group, as she sends out novellas. So we had Mr. Wimp last month, we've had Mr. Smooth this month, and that was great. Another 5-star read for me, and I can't wait for the next one, which is coming very soon. And then I read 4 books by Seven Rue. Another smutty romance author I have read from Seven Rue before, but I read Sex Tape 2, Sex Tape 3, and Sin. And they were all very disappointing. I think I gave them 3.75, 4, 3.5, and 3. And this is because I'm not kink shaming, but it features a particular kink in all of these books that I was not keen on. Like, this happens in a lot of BDSM dark smutty romances. There will be kinks I personally do not enjoy, but they are not a massive part of the story, so I can kind of ignore them and focus on anything else. In these books, it was huge. Like, in the first Sex Tape book, it wasn't that bad, so I could kind of put it off to the side. It was one really short scene. In the second book, there was a longer scene and a short one, and I was at that point like, oh, I'm really not sure I'm going to finish this one. But knowing, like, and loving Seven Rue's novellas before, I went into book 3, and it became a really heavy thing. So because of that, I won't be reading the 4th book in that series. And then I went to Sin, where, if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't even listed in the content warnings, but it appears. And I was done at that point. I finished it, and I was like, no, I'm not reading the last book in the Sex Tape series, and I'm not reading the 2nd book in Sin. So I was done with that. I will give some of the other stuff a go in the future, but I will be asking around for other readers about this particular kink. If you want to know where it is, ask in the comments. But and then I read 2 non-fictions, which is strange for me, but I read A History of the Vampire in Popular Culture by Violet Fenn, which I ended up giving 5 stars through. It's not a chronological history of the vampire in literature, but it looks at different aspects of the lore, how they're written in literature, the psychology, the sexuality and sensualism of the vampire, and I found it really interesting. And then I read Let's Pretend This Never Happened by Jenny Lawson. Now, a few months ago, I read Broken by Jenny Lawson and adored it, gave it 5 stars, and I gave Let's Pretend This Never Happened 5 stars as well, because it's absolutely hilarious. Like, even though she talks about a lot of mental health and very heavy stuff, Jenny Lawson is hilarious, and the way she writes, it's literally like you are reading her thoughts about this book. It's that there's so many tangents and offshoots, and trains of thought dissolve and pick up and wander off down country lanes. It's amazing. And the way I described it to a friend was, it reads like it was written by a person with ADHD. And it fits, and it's funny. And then the last 2 books I read were Christmas on the 13th Floor by Lee Court, which I give 4 stars. It was technically a Christmas smutty romance that I'd had since Christmas, but I only fancied it picking it up in August, which is weird, but I actually really enjoyed it. And then the last book I read in August was a disappointment, and that was a collection of poetry. You Took the Last Bus Home by Brian Bilston. Now, poetry and me typically do not get along well anyway, but every so often I pick something up just to give it a go, hoping to find that one that will work for me. Same with non-fiction. I don't read a lot of it, but I pick it up occasionally just to see if something works for me, and recently more non-fiction has been working for me. So I've been actually reading and completing more books and DNFing them, but me and poetry still are not working. So I ended up reading 19 books over the month, which I'm really happy with. It's a really nice number. And so far in September, I've read 2. I've read Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero, which I give 5 stars to. It was amazing. If you like, think of it as like a mashup between Scooby-Doo and H.P. Lovecraft. However you imagine that working in your head, it probably happens in some way. So, and then I read There's No Way I Die First by Lisa Springer for a blog tour, and YA horror. I'm really on the fence about. In some aspects it works really well, and in others it doesn't, but it was good. I give it 4 stars. But yeah, that's it for this wrap up, and I will see you again at the end of September with another one.